What if I told you that you could physically change the neural wiring in your brain to effortlessly play a complex piano piece complete with entirely new neural pathways without ever actually touching a keyboard?
Right. Or, the physical health of your brain right now might be dictated not just by what you eat, but by the exact emotional frequency of the thoughts you had before you even got out of bed this morning.
Yeah, it sounds a little out there, but welcome to today's deep dive. We are talking directly to you, the learner, who maybe suspects there is a completely different way to operate in this world.
Absolutely.
And our mission today is to understand exactly how our thoughts literally and physically shape our reality. And more importantly, how to stop being stuck in those same repetitive, exhausting life loops, that hamster wheel feeling.
We all know that feeling. So to do this, we're pulling from a massive stack of really fascinating research centered around the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself: How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Such a great title.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're pairing that with the clinical work of neuroscientist Dr. Daniel G. Amen, because what we're really examining here is that intersection where hard biology meets quantum physics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we jump into the mind-bending quantum field stuff, which is wild, by the way, we need to establish a biological baseline.
Right, the hardware.
Exactly. A lot of us just walk around assuming our brain is essentially a fixed object inside our skull. Like, it is what it is. But the source material makes it totally clear that the brain is not a static piece of hardware. It's both the hardware and the software of our reality, and it can be physically altered.
And that concept right there is where Dr. Daniel Amen's work becomes so critical to this whole discussion. I mean, he's a clinical neuroscientist who has conducted over 70,000 SPECT scans.
Wait, 70,000?
Yeah, 70,000. It's a massive data set.
Yeah.
But to understand why that matters, we need to quickly distinguish between different types of brain imaging. Because when most people think of a brain scan, they think of like an MRI or a CT scan.
Right, the loud tube you slide into at the hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those are basically just anatomical photographs. They look at the physical structure of the brain to see if there's, a tumor or a lesion. But a SPECT scan, which stands for single photon emission computed tomography, is entirely different.
Okay, how so?
It doesn't just look at structure, it looks at function. It tracks the actual blood flow and activity patterns in real time.
So it's essentially a video of the brain working, like showing which areas are lighting up and which areas are basically asleep at the wheel.
Precisely. That's the exact distinction we need to make. And after analyzing tens of thousands of these scans, Dr. Amen found that the physical functioning of the brain is constantly being reshaped by our software.
By software, you mean our thoughts.
Yeah, the programming of our day-to-day lives, the unexamined emotional traumas we carry, and even a routine like negative thinking patterns, they don't just put us in a bad mood for an hour. They physically alter the blood flow and the actual terrain of the brain.
And the foreword of the book actually includes his own personal story, which I found genuinely jarring. I mean, here is a clinical neuroscientist who decided to scan his own brain at a looking, quote, toxic and bumpy.
Yeah, toxic and bumpy.
It looked like a brain that had sustained actual physical damage.
Which is, a terrifying realization for a brain specialist.
Yeah.
But the scan just reflected his lifestyle at the time. He admitted to having terrible habits.
What kind of habits?
Well, he was drinking excessive amounts of diet soda, eating fast food, getting maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. And he was operating under this chronic stress from unexamined past hurts.
Oh, wow.
And what the SPECT scan revealed was that chronic stress and poor habits literally restrict blood flow to certain areas of the brain. That's what causes them to look pitted or bumpy in the scan. They are essentially starved of nutrients and oxygen.
But the truly empowering part of this is what happened next. Over the next 2 decades, he fundamentally changed his routine. He corrected his negative beliefs, and he began engaging in daily meditative processes.
The results were incredible.
Right. When he scanned his brain again 20 years later, it didn't look 20 years older. It looked significantly healthier, fuller, and literally younger.
Because he changed the blood flow. That's the key. When you engage in conscious positive habits like meditation, you aren't just relaxing. You're actively forcing the dilation of blood vessels.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, meditation specifically boosts blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center of the brain. It's responsible for focus, decision-making, emotional regulation. By sending more blood there, he literally nourished and rebuilt the tissue.
Okay, so Dr. Emmon proves we can change the brain's hardware on a biological level. We aren't just stuck with the brain we have today. But what is actually driving that change? I mean, if my physical brain is the hardware, what is the software actually made of?
To answer that, Dr. Dispenza argues we have to zoom way, way in. Like, we have to look past the biology, past the cells, all the way down to the micro subatomic level.
Okay, down to the quantum level.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because for centuries, humanity operated under this old school view of reality, championed by thinkers like Descartes and Sir Isaac Newton. That was a mechanistic model.
Hmm.
It completely separated mind and matter.
Right.
The universe was viewed as a predictable physical machine operating on fixed, unchangeable laws.
This is the old school model of an atom we all built in middle school science class, right? The toothpicks and the styrofoam balls, where you have a solid nucleus in the middle and solid little electron balls orbiting around it in perfect predictable circles.
Yes, exactly. And in that Newtonian model, reality is entirely predetermined by physical matter. Your thoughts are just, well, invisible ghosts in the machine. They have absolutely no physical effect on the world around you.
But then Einstein comes along.
Right. Albert Einstein introduced E equals mc squared, which proved that matter and energy are essentially interchangeable. They are two expressions of the exact same thing.
Which completely shatters the styrofoam ball model.
It completely shatters it because when quantum physicists actually developed the technology to look at the subatomic structure of an atom, they realized there are no solid balls at all. An atom is 99.999999% energy.
That is wild.
And only 0.0001% physical substance. It's almost entirely empty space. The electrons aren't planets orbiting a sun. They are these unpredictable clouds of invisible probability.
Wait, let me make sure I'm picturing this correctly. If I'm 99.999999% energy and I am almost entirely empty space, why do I feel so solid? Like, why does this desk I'm sitting at feel hard?
What's fascinating here is...
And wait, more importantly, if my observation somehow dictates reality, does this mean my daily habit of focusing on my problems is literally forcing those problems to physically materialize in my life?
What's fascinating here is that the answer to both is yes. I mean, it sounds totally absurd on its face, but let's break down both of those questions. First, the reason the desk feels solid is purely due to the frequency of the energy.
Okay.
Think of a ceiling fan. When it's turned off, you see empty space between the blades, right?
Yeah.
But when you turn it on high, the blades spin so fast that the fan appears as a solid, continuous disk. You couldn't throw a tennis ball through it. That is what subatomic particles are doing. They are vibrating at speeds that create the absolute illusion of solid matter.
Okay, so it's a vibration creating a boundary. I get that. But what about my second point? Am I actually physically manifesting my own bad day?
That is where the physics gets deeply personal, through a principle called the observer effect. In the quantum field, subatomic particles like electrons don't actually exist as physical objects when no one is looking at them.
That is so hard to wrap your head around.
I know. They exist in a state of superposition. They are essentially an infinite array of probabilities in an invisible energy field. They are everywhere and nowhere at once. They only manifest into a physical particle existing in a specific point in space and time when an observer focuses attention on them.
So it's literally as if the energy is waiting for instructions?
Yes. The moment you observe, the infinite waves of probability collapse into a single physical event. In physics, this is called collapsing the wave function. So to answer your question, if you are constantly observing your life through the lens of your stress, your anxieties, your past problems, you are continuously collapsing the quantum field into that exact predictable reality. You're forcing the energy to match your expectation.
Man, that is a staggering amount of responsibility. I mean, if physical reality exists as pure potential until our consciousness shapes it, then the field is just sitting there. But how exactly do we communicate with it? How do I actually collapse the wave function to get what I want instead of just recreating my current stress?
We communicate with the field through our state of being.
Yeah.
And the research indicates that your state of being is a literal biological combination of two things, your thoughts and your feelings.
So thoughts plus feelings equals reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a brilliant experiment that moves this out of the realm of, just theory and into hard biology. Dr. Glenn Ryan, a cellular biologist at the HeartMath Research Center, wanted to test if human intention could affect complex biological systems. So he had test subjects hold vials containing actual human DNA.
Just physically holding the glass vials in their hand?
Correct.
Yeah.
Just holding them. The first group of participants was asked to simply generate elevated positive emotions, feelings of deep love, gratitude, appreciation. They held the DNA while focusing on feeling those emotions for 2 minutes.
And did the DNA change?
There was absolutely no change.
Oh.
So he brought in a second group. This time, he told them to hold a very specific, clear intention, a pure thought. He asked them to mentally intend for the DNA strands to physically unwind, which, by the way, usually requires high heat or chemical intervention. But he told them not to generate any emotion, just hold the intellectual thought.
And again, no change.
Nothing happened. Zero. But then came the third group. Dr. Reen asked this group to combine the two elements. They held the clear thought, the intention to unwind the DNA, and they simultaneously generated an elevated positive emotion.
And what happened to the physical matter inside the vial?
In just 2 minutes, the DNA in the vials wound or unwound by as much as 25%.
So what does this all mean? It reminds me of trying to start a car. The thought, the clear mental intention is the steering wheel. It points you in the specific direction you want to go. But the emotion, the physical feeling, that's the gas pedal. You need both working in tandem to actually move the vehicle.
It's a great analogy, but we really need to understand the literal science behind why that happens, not just the metaphor. Dr. Dispenza uses the science of electromagnetism to explain this. In your body, your thoughts are measured by ECG machines as electrical impulses in the brain.
Right.
Your feelings, meanwhile, are measured by ECG machines as magnetic rhythms generated by the heart.
So we are talking about literal electrical and magnetic fields, not just like poetic ideas about the universe.
Absolutely literal. When you are stressed or fearful, your brain waves are jagged and your heart rhythm is erratic.
Yeah.
They're out of phase with each other. But when you hold a clear thought and a feeling of deep gratitude, the electrical waves of the brain and the magnetic waves of the heart synchronize.
They sync up?
Yeah, the peaks and valleys of the waves perfectly match up. This is called coherence. When you achieve heart-brain coherence, your body broadcasts a highly organized electromagnetic signature into the quantum field. And that coherent energy is what literally alters physical matter, like denaturing the DNA in the vials.
Coherence is key. It acts like a laser where all the waves of light are perfectly aligned, making it incredibly powerful compared to just a regular light bulb spreading light everywhere. But if we are generating this coherent signal right now, in the present, what happens when that signal interacts with the flow of time itself? Because quantum entanglement suggests things are connected beyond just physical space.
This is where the research goes into some truly wild territory. In July of 2000, an Israeli doctor named Leonard Leibovici conducted a double-blind randomized controlled trial involving over 3,393, to be exact, hospital patients who had suffered from sepsis.
Okay, a prayer experiment. We have seen these before. Usually one group gets prayed for and the control group doesn't, and then you just measure who heals faster.
Right, but this one had a massive twist. The people doing the praying in July of 2000 were given lists of patients to pray for. But the patients on those lists were not currently in the hospital.
Wait, what?
They had been in the hospital between 1990 and 1996.
You're kidding.
4 to 10 years prior to the prayer actually taking place.
Hold on. You were telling me they were praying in the year 2000 for people who were sick in 1994? That completely breaks the laws of physics as I understand them. I mean, how does the science actually justify retroactively curing a fever?
To understand that, we have to look at how quantum physics treats time. In the old Newtonian model, time is a linear river flowing in one direction, past, present, future. But in the quantum model, there's a concept called non-locality, and theories like the block universe.
Okay.
This suggests that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously as potentials within the quantum field. Time is not a line, it's a solid block of information.
So the thought and the emotion, that coherent electromagnetic signature you mentioned, isn't bound by a linear timeline. It can ripple outward in all directions.
Yes. When they look at the medical records of the patients who were prayed for retroactively, those patients showed statistically significant improvements. They had shorter fevers and shorter hospital stays back in the 1990s compared to the control group.
That is unbelievable.
The intention generated in 2000 literally collapsed a wave function that affected physical reality years in the past.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If our coherent electromagnetic signature can influence outcomes beyond time itself, we have to completely rethink how we go about getting what we want in our daily lives. Dr. Dispenza actually shares a story about his own daughter that illustrates the practical application of this.
Oh, the Italy story.
Right. She was a college student who wanted a very specific, almost impossible summer job in Italy.
She had a whole list of highly specific demands, like she wanted to visit at least 6 Italian cities, spend a week in Florence, work for 6 weeks making a decent wage, and then still be able to spend the rest of the summer at home.
And in a standard Newtonian world, you would immediately start stressing over the how, right? You would frantically search job boards, compromise on your vision, and just trying to force a mechanical cause and effect reality.
But Dispenza told her to clearly intend what she wanted. So, the specific thought, and leave the how entirely to the quantum field. Her job was to internally live the experience ahead of time. Every single day, she visualized the trip, but crucially, she generated the emotional feeling of gratitude as if she were already experiencing it.
And that is a massive paradigm shift. We usually wait for an event to happen to feel gratitude. We wait for the outside world to change how we feel on the inside.
Exactly, but in quantum creating, feeling gratitude before the event occurs is the mechanism. Gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. By feeling thankful before the job materialized, she was biologically convincing her body that the future reality was happening right now. She was broadcasting that coherent signature.
And it paid off. When she found a $4,000 course that was a compromise, her dad told her not to settle. She maintained her coherence. Then, totally randomly, she was chatting with her art history teacher in the library, and the teacher remembered a colleague who needed someone to teach level I Italian to American students in Italy.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. All expenses paid, teaching in 6 different cities, spending the last week in Florence, and returning home for the rest of the summer. It perfectly matched her hyper-specific vision. She didn't try to force the outcome, she just surrendered and allowed a, quote, quantum surprise to collapse into her reality.
It is a perfect example of aligning the electrical thought and the magnetic emotion. The universe orchestrated the event in a way she never could have mechanically predicted.
Which brings us to the most frustrating question of all. If this is all true, and the science supports that we have the power to bend reality and time by aligning our thoughts and feelings, why is it so incredibly hard to do? Like, why do we constantly default back to our old stress?
If we connect this to the bigger biological picture, we have to look at a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law. It states that nerve cells that fire together wire together.
And this isn't just a catchy phrase. It is the biological trap that keeps us stuck.
It is the literal mechanism of habit formation. When you do the same things every day, you are activating the exact same neural networks. Every time those neurons fire, your brain wraps that specific neural pathway in a fatty substance called myelin.
Okay, myelin.
Yeah, myelin acts like insulation on an electrical wire. The thicker the myelin, the faster and more automatic the thought or behavior becomes. So eventually, your reactions become hardwired into automatic, unconscious biological programs.
This perfectly explains the morning routine trap. Let's look at the biological cascade that happens when you wake up. For most people, the very first thing they do before their feet even hit the floor is reach for their phone.
Exactly the issue. You look at your email, the news, or social media, and you immediately spike your cortisol levels.
Yeah.
Your brain starts scanning the environment for threats. You remember your angry boss, your financial stress, the argument you had last night. Before you've even gotten out of bed, your environment has dictated your internal state of being.
You're just reacting.
Right. You are broadcasting the exact same jagged, stressed electromagnetic signature as yesterday.
Your past becomes your future. The book points out that this is the literal definition of insanity, expecting a new reality to magically appear while doing the exact same things, thinking the same myelinated thoughts, and feeling the same stressed emotions.
It's a closed loop.
It makes me think of that Bill Murray movie, Groundhog Day. If you're trapped in a loop, it's not a mysterious force keeping you there. You created the loop, but because you created it, you can break it. You look at great historical figures, people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., or Joan of Arc.
They profoundly understood how to break this biological loop.
Yeah.
I mean, their grand visions were considered absolute unrealistic nonsense by their contemporaries.
Because their visions were completely unattached to their physical environments. Gandhi envisioned a free India when the physical evidence around him only showed deeply entrenched colonial tyranny. He didn't let his sensory input dictate his internal coherence. He held on to that clear thought and elevated emotion, regardless of what the environment was screaming at him.
That is the essence of overriding the Newtonian trap. They refused to let their external environment control their internal state of being. They lived in the future reality in their minds so completely that their bodies biologically believed they were already there.
Which brings us to the ultimate tool for breaking the habit of being yourself. If we can't rely on our environment to change us, we have to physically change our brains from the inside out. And the mechanism for that is mental rehearsal.
Yes. There is a brilliant study mentioned in the text that proves just how profoundly effective this is. It's a famous piano experiment. Researchers took a group of people who had never played the piano and had them physically practice a complex, one-handed piano chord exercise for 2 hours a day, for 5 days.
Okay.
As expected, functional brain scans showed they developed thick, new neural circuits in the motor cortex area of the brain that controls those fingers.
Right, simple cause and effect. You physically practice, your brain builds the hardware to support the new skill.
But then they brought in a second group. This group did not touch piano. They sat in a room and only mentally rehearsed playing the piano chords for 2 hours a day for 5 days.
Just vividly imagining their fingers hitting the keys.
Just imagining it.
Really?
But doing it with such profound focus, holding the clear intention and the feeling of executing the movement, that the brain did not know the difference between the thought and physical reality.
Wow.
When researchers scanned the brains of this second group, they found almost the exact same new neural circuits, myelinated and hardwired, as the people who had physically played the piano.
That is absolutely staggering. So what does this actually mean for you, the learner? It means you have the biological capability to physically install the neural hardware of your future self before the event even happens. You don't have to wait for the external experience to change your brain. You can systematically change your brain to pull the experience into your reality.
Because the brain does not distinguish between a vividly imagined inner world and the physical outer world. Through dedicated mental rehearsal, you can prune away the old, toxic neural pathways Dr. Amen saw in his early scans and hardwire entirely new ones. You are literally preparing your physical biology for a new destiny.
It all comes back to that morning routine. If you wake up and unconsciously let your phone, your stress, and your environment dictate your thoughts, you are just reinforcing the old hardware. You are locking yourself into the exact same quantum state. If you're trapped in a repetitive loop in your own life, it is not a mysterious curse keeping you there. You created the loop with your own unconscious hardwired habits.
Exactly.
But because your brain is neuroplastic and because you are a conscious observer of the quantum field, you hold the ultimate power to break it.
You are not a victim of your biology or your physical circumstances. You are the architect of both.
So let's synthesize this journey. Today's deep dive took us from the macro-level blood flow of the brain down to the invisible probabilities of the subatomic realm. To stop being a victim of your environment, you have to truly integrate the fact that you are 99.9999999% energy. By aligning a clear, focused intention with an elevated, positive, emotion-like deep gratitude, you generate heart-brain coherence.
Right.
This allows you to broadcast a new electromagnetic signature into the field. You can physically rebuild your brain's hardware through focused mental rehearsal, step off the relentless routine of your past, and collapse the quantum wave of probability into the exact future you want to experience.
And as you take these concepts back into your daily life, I want to leave you with one final thought to deeply consider based on that piano study. We just explored how vividly mentally rehearsing piano chords physically rewires the biological structure of your brain as if you actually played them. If your brain literally cannot tell the difference between a powerfully imagined event and a physical reality, what future are your daily repetitive worries and anxieties currently hardwiring your brain to create?
Oof. That is a thought that will absolutely change how you look at your next stressful moment. If you are laying the track ahead of you with every single thought and feeling, make sure it is a track you actually want to ride. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these mechanics, take control of your coherence, and go create a quantum surprise in your day.